Contents of a Dead Man's Pocket, Part 1 by Jack Finney. At the little living room desk, Tom Benedict rolled two sheets of flimsy and a heavier top sheet, carbon paper sandwiched between them, into his portable. In her office memo, the top sheet was headed, and he typed tomorrow's date just below this. Then he glanced at a creased yellow sheet, covered with his own handwriting, beside the typewriter. Hot in here, he muttered to himself. Then, from the short hallway at his back, he heard the muffled clang of a wire coat hangers in the bedroom closet, and at this reminder of what his wife was doing, he thought, hot, guilty conscience. He got up, shoving his hands into the back pockets of his gray wash slacks, stepped to the living room window beside the desk, and stood breathing on the glass, watching the expanding circlet of mist staring down through the autumn night at Lexington Avenue. 11 stories below, he was a tall, lean, dark-haired young man in a pullover sweater, who looked as though he had played not football, probably, but basketball in college. Now, he placed the heels of his hands against the top edge of the lower window frame and shoved forward, but as usual, the window didn't budge, and he had to lower his hands and then shoot them hard upward to join the window open a few inches. He dusted his hands, muttering, but still he didn't begin his work. He crossed the room to the hallway entrance and, leaning against the door jamb, hands shoved into his back pockets again, he called Claire. When his wife answered, he said, "Sure, you don't mind going alone?" "No," her voice was muffled, and he knew her head and shoulders were in the bedroom closet. Then the tap of her high heels sounded on the wood floor, and she appeared at the end of the little hallway wearing a slip, both hands raised to one ear, clipping on an earring. She smiled at him, a slender, very pretty girl with light brown, almost blonde hair, her prettiness emphasized by the pleasant nature that showed in her face. "It's just that I hate you to miss this movie. You wanted to see it too." "Yeah, I know." He ran his fingers through his hair. "Gotta get this done, though." She nodded, accepting this. Then, glancing at the desk across the living room, she said, "You work too much, though, Tom, and too hard." He smiled. "You don't mind, though, will you? When the money comes rolling in, I'm known as the boy wizard of wholesale groceries." "I guess not," she smiled, and turned back toward the bedroom. At his desk again, Tom lighted a cigarette. Then, a few moments later, as Claire appeared dressed and ready to leave, he sent it on the rim of the ashtray. Just after 7, she said, "I can make the beginning of the first feature." He walked to the front door closet to help her on with her coat. He kissed her then, and for an instant, holding her close, smelling the perfume she had used, he was tempted to go with her. It was not actually true that he had to work tonight, though he very much wanted to. This was his own project, unannounced as yet in his office, and it could be postponed. But then they won't see it till Monday, he thought once again, and if I give it to the boss tomorrow, he might read it over the weekend. "Have a good time," he said aloud. He gave his wife a little swat and opened the door for her, feeling the air from the building hallway, smelling faintly of floor wax, stream gently past his face. He watched her walked down the hall, flicked a hand in response as she waved, and then he started to close the door, but it resisted for a moment. As the door opening narrowed, the current of warm air from the hallway channeled through the smaller opening now, suddenly rushing past him with accelerated force. Behind him, he heard the slap of the window curtains against the wall and the sound of paper fluttering from his desk, and he had to push to close the door. Turning, he saw a sheet of white paper drifting to the floor in a series of arcs, and another sheet, yellow, moving toward the window, caught in a dying current flowing through the narrow opening. As he watched, the paper struck the bottom edge of the window and hung there for an instant, plastered against the glass and wood. Then, as the moving air stilled completely, the curtain swinging back from the wall to hang free again, he saw the yellow sheet drop to the window ledge and slide over out of sight. He ran across the room, grasped the bottom of the window, and tugged, staring through the glass. He saw the yellow sheet, dimly now in the darkness of outside, lying on the ornamental ledge a yard below the window. Even as he watched, it was moving, scraping slowly along the edge, pushed by the breeze that pressed steadily against the building wall. He heaved on the window with all his strength, and it shot open with a bang. The window weight rattling in the casing, but the paper was past his reach, and leaning out into the night, he watched it scud steadily along the ledge to the south, half plastered against the wall, above the muffled sound of the street traffic far below. He could hear the dry scrape of its movement like a leaf on the pavement. The living room of the next apartment to the south projected a yard or more further out toward the street than this one. Because of this, Benix paid $7.50 less rent than their neighbors, and now the yellow sheet sliding along the stone ledge, nearly invisible in night, was stopped by the projecting blank wall of the next apartment. It lay motionless then, in the corner formed by two walls a good 5 yards away, pressed firmly against the ornate corner ornament of the ledge by the breeze that moved past Tom Benix's face. He knelt at the window and stared at the yellow paper for a full minute or more, waiting for it to move, to slide off the ledge and fall, hoping he could follow its course to the street, and then hurry down in an elevator and retrieve it. But it didn't move. And then he saw that the paper was caught firmly between the projection of the convoluted corner ornament and the ledge. He thought about the poker from the fireplace and the broom, then the mop, discarding each thought as it occurred to him. There was nothing in the apartment long enough to reach the paper. It was hard for him to understand that he actually had to abandon it. It was ridiculous, and he began to curse. Of all the papers on his desk, why did it have to be this one in particular? On 4 long Saturday afternoons, he had stood at supermarkets, counting the people who passed certain displays, and the results were scribbled on that yellow sheet. From stacks of trade publications, gone over page by page in snatched half hours at work, and during evenings at home, he had copied facts, quotations, and figures onto the sheets. And he had carried it with him to the public library on Fifth Avenue, where he spent a dozen lunch hours and early evenings adding more. All were needed to support and lend authority to his idea for a new grocery store display method. Without them, his idea was a mere opinion, and there they all lay in his own improvised shorthand, countless hours of work out there on the ledge. For many seconds, he believed he was going to abandon the yellow sheet, that there was nothing else to do. The work could be duplicated, but it would take 2 months, and the time to present this idea was now, for use in the spring displays. He struck his fist on the window ledge, then he shrugged. Even though his plan was adopted, he told himself it wouldn't bring him a raise in pay, not immediately. Anyway, or as a direct result, it won't bring me a promotion either, he argued, not of itself. But just the same, he couldn't escape the thought that this and other independent projects, some already done and others planned for the future, would gradually mark him out from the score of the other young men in his company. There were the way to change from a name on the payroll to a name in the minds of the company officials. They were the beginning of the long, long climb to where he was determined to be at the very top. And he knew he was going out there in the darkness, after the yellow sheet, 15 feet beyond his reach. By a kind of instinct, he instantly began his intention acceptable to himself by laughing at it. The mental picture of himself siding along the ledge outside was absurd. It was actually comical, and he smiled. He imagined describing it. It would make a good story at once at the office, and it occurred to him would add a special interest and importance to his memorandum, which would do it no harm at all. The end of part 1.